it's still his background. I think that ultimately the point I was always trying to make is that music in and of itself is not music in and of itself is just a product of the experiences that you have, right? Culture is like a mirror. You can try, if your mirror has smudge on it, and you can try to clean that mirror. Ultimately, whatever is reflecting back from that mirror is whatever is the reality. And what I mean by that is Lil Durk is simply making a profit or rapping about his own personal experiences
by inciting beef.
Okay,
by inciting beef.
Regardless, but regardless,
is that okay
regardless
with you?
of his actions, I think that the impact that music has is marginal, just like the impact that you have.
Hold on.
Marginal in your coverage.
Hold on.
Okay, which was my point overall. My point always was that what is infinitely more prescient, what is infinitely more important with respect to violence in the streets, gang violence, or any kind of violent activity happening as a product of people's existences, as a product of people's experiences, is happening as a consequence of inadequate funding, happening as a consequence of redlining, happening as a consequence of historic and contemporary white supremacy.
I'm not
This is what I mean when I say the material conditions are infinitely more important, which is precisely what I was mentioning in that conversation with you as well.
Wait, I'm not disagreeing. I'm talking about lame blame, because that's where we're having these conversations, what some people think is in post. You get what I mean? Like, for example, that's why I said your lack of understanding of what's going on, that drill music these days is probably one of the top 3 most prevalent and most popular and most lucrative type of music that any type of, and it's spread to the UK, Toronto, Jacksonville, it's in New York. So when I say that to you, do you really think that it's a fair place of blame, especially even these days, right? Philly has the worst murder rate. You can look it up by capita currently, right? They're also getting into this same type of style. What I did with the war in Chirac ended in 2017. Lil Durk just got a multi-platinum record where he's making fun of another popular rapper who just died last year. Lil Durk is way up. He is not in the position of these people who you're trying to act like, oh, they're victims of circumstances. These people are now, they're the villains of opportunity, where they're like, yo, hey, so that's why I always look at people who are misinformed. I said, well, if we're going to have the proper conversation, number one, I never started it, right? Granted, did I say I have zero blame to take? I think I took some blame even in this, and I've always publicly said it. I said everybody who has thought about when it comes to drill music does not want to have the real discussion. Because when you're saying it's part of Lil Durk's story, what part of Lil Durk's story now, when he's rapping about all these millions that he has and all the things he could do financially and he's in Beverly Hills, what part of that has to do with him inciting a gang war? And this is a gang war, my brother. When you sit here and you make a song called Should've Ducked, and you know that one of the biggest rappers who was upcoming was called FBG Duck, and you're making fun of his death. That's when the feds just arrested 3 people, well, actually more than 3, about 4 to 5 people from O Block, basically saying these guys were responsible for their death. If you think that it starts or stops with Akademiks, you're just not, like, you're keeping the surface level.
I don't think that. And I think I've been trying to hammer on this point over and over again. I don't think you are as relevant as you think I said you were in this conversation as it pertains to beefing up gang violence. In the video itself, I have talked about how it was unhelpful, and you recognize that as well, okay? But ultimately, the real relevant component with respect to violence is always going to be material conditions. That is the larger overarching issue, and I think that you and I probably agree on that as well.
We agree.
There are responsible parties that are not from these areas that are also taking advantage of the situation and making money off of this kind of back and forth violence, and in certain instances, quite literally instigating it. But if the actors that are instigating it are people like Lil Durk, well, they're still from these communities. They still have family members in these communities. They still have a direct relationship with these communities. So when they
have made it out of these
making art,
brother.
when they're making art about their own personal experiences, it might have an incendiary or inciting component to it, right? It might. And I'm sure you know better than I do about Lil Durk's discography.
I'm gonna extrapolate. You saying that is kind of like, you know, when Kanye's jumping out saying like, yo, he's still a slave, or when he's going at Jewish people. Like, essentially, these guys are privileged guys who we're talking about now. Like you keep saying Durk is talking about his story. I think Kanye has a little bit more privilege
than Lil Durk does. Like, proximity wise, like Lil Durk is closer to O Block than Kanye is to his original beginnings in Chicago. I mean, he's a billionaire. I think that you know both of those statements could be true, but there is definitely a larger impact on one.
Hold on, and this is where I gotta educate you again, right? Lil Durk still raps about a young kid, right, who lost his life in Chicago that had no resources like him, never made it out, nothing like that. A kid named Tuka literally uses him as a punchline to make his songs hot and to make himself seem more relative to his fan base, to make it seem like he's in Chicago. He's not in Chicago. He's not running the same blocks. And you know what people do when they hear that? Because I had to sit and listen to the mother of FBG Doug cry to me and say, why won't you show the other side of it? Because these guys are getting millions. These guys are running up millions off of a situation they're not in.
It's their story though, right? Like, you understand. Like, no
so
matter
how much you
try to remove Lil Durk, no matter how much you try to remove Lil Durk, say he lives in Beverly Hills or whatever, those are his real experiences, real lived experiences that originally is what made Lil Durk Lil Durk. So ultimately, if everyone is exploiting a situation, if there's one party that is like the most adequate to exploit the situation, it's still always going to be someone like Lil Durk. So. All right. Okay, that's my take.
No. That's great. No, listen. Hey, I love when you debate. And by the way, I could rock with anything.
I'm not a good debater. I don't like debating. I don't think this is a debate.
No. You had Andrew Tate down in the first four. It's all good. Here's the thing. Let me say this to you. Okay, great. I'm gonna go with what you say. Right. So okay, he could say whatever he wants to say because that's his. No,
I'm not saying that.
What are you saying now? I don't want to misquote you.
I'm not denying the impact that Lil Durk's music might have on street level violence. Okay, but
you're not placating any blame though. You're saying that he's allowed to speak on it, and I'm telling you, listen, it's one thing if you're hey, okay, you have nothing going on, you're just rapping about what's going on with you in your reality. Lil Durk has signed over $100 million in record deals, and his reality is not what these guys are actually talking about anymore. It's been a long time since then. So right now what he does, I'm telling you, because I've talked to the mom of the deceased of the people from the other side. He has a large enough voice that when he says something, it's fanning the fuse. That's what it is. So I always say, why does my name ever get brought up when, okay, you could say, you may have been part of the problem at a point, but you stopped. You exited 2017. Then I asked everyone, what about these other people who are still encouraging? There's somebody, you probably never heard of these people.
You were never from there. That's the difference. I think that's like, if we're going to talk about you versus Lil Durk,
okay,
covering this sort of stuff, like he's making art, he is telling his story,
okay,
versus you're just covering it. If I think that like there is moral culpability there, I would still put you in a worse position overall than someone who is just basically rapping about their own personal experiences while making art. But obviously still nowhere near as bad as like record labels who also prod and poke and make the situation worse overall, especially because dead or alive, they're still going to profit.
Wait, but I've watched your extensive commentary about what's going on in Ukraine and other places. You're not from there. Why do you choose to? Because you're using a very amateur tactics of like what the actual rappers say, because they're usually saying, well, this is like, hey, we're broke.
Because well, I'm a commentator, and so are you, right?
Yeah. But do you comment?
When I'm talking
wait,
about,
hold on. Do you comment on other things going on in other countries or other? Where are you from, by the way?
I'm from Turkey. I grew up in Turkey.
Okay. Do you comment on things going on outside of that scope?
Yeah, of course. And I live in America now, and I don't exclusively talk about what's going on in America. I talk about larger narratives. I'm not from Chicago. I've never been to Chicago. I talk about white supremacy. I'm a white person. I'm not a black person, obviously. And yes,
I feel like you're pandering with that. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I do talk about things that are happening, but my coverage oftentimes is not going to incite further anger. Usually, I try to avoid that.
That's subjective.
So that's precisely what I'm saying here.
And
but
depending
again,
on where I'm from, I could have felt somewhere.
But again, like, let's say someone, I guess I can't even make a comparison with respect to like Ukraine, right? But one thing I always get mad at, and this is a constant, right? People, I call them Naperville kids, okay? There's a lot of white kids in Naperville that, will run around saying, you ain't slide for Vaughn. You ain't slide for Vaughn. And it's like, bro, you live in a fucking McMansion that your mom and dad got.
I agree.
Okay. And you are so careless in the way that you are celebrating Black Death, specifically as though it's just for you to consume. It's just content for you to consume when we're talking about fucking, real people dying. Okay.
Hold on.
And that is. Do
you think that's a byproduct of me, or do you think that that's a byproduct of like my coverage, or do you think it's a byproduct of probably the larger scope of everything? Where put it like this,
it's much larger. No, it's much larger than your coverage.
I did the Warren Shark for 3 years. I never said when is so and so going to slide for so and so. You know who does say that though? You know who does say that though? Lil Durk said, when are you going to slide for your mans? Yo, if I ever die, make sure you slide for me. These are the rappers themselves.
I'm not saying you're doing that.
Okay.
I'm stating. I don't think you. I don't know why you don't hear me when I say this. This is not about my analysis of your content. If you want to have a conversation with like moral culpability in comparison to you versus Lil Durk, then that's a different conversation. But if we're going to talk about like the larger systemic problems, then of course you are nowhere near as relevant in the field of battle or in the way that people live every day.
Okay,
and their everyday experiences in comparison to like even what record labels are doing. The "you ain't slide for Vaughn" shit that a random white kid from Naperville says is just a further extension of the way that I think record labels profit off of black violence and black bodies in the streets. I think that it's not good, and there are way larger people. There are way larger faulty actors here than you or Adam 22, or if you're going to talk about people that are sharing their own personal experiences, like the rappers themselves.
Okay, so we're back again to a point of agreement. So I agree with you there. I agree with you wholehearted. I guess where my commentary about, I was like, well, I don't think he's touching deep enough, was that let's be very clear. And I do like Andrew Callahan. He hit me up. He's a very cordial guy. He's a very nice guy. He flew out to New Jersey and I granted him an interview. I had this conversation with even Adam, and Adam was like, well, he said he was blindsided. I said, well, you have to kind of realize what this is. And this is where I was saying to you, right? Because I think that documentary was a really good documentary in the sense of it's going to get you to believe what you need to believe. If you watch that documentary, zero of the accountability would be on the people in these situations. You're going to walk away to say, damn, it's fucked up they're in these situations, and it's fucked up other people are taking advantage of these situations. You don't actually realize and understand the actual, people who are within these environments and just the crime in general, that if you're going to do a documentary about Chicago, why we have to the first place I would start. This is where I believe that Andrew Callahan, he was wrong. Like, you can't just show a concert, interview a rapper who never had a hit, no disrespect to him, and then just jump to me and No Jumper. The first thing we gotta understand is why a dude could get caught with like literally a pistol with a fucking switch or a pistol with a 100-round clip on it, and he gets let out tomorrow. Why is Chicago and actually Illinois in reality the place where guns supposedly are policed one of the highest in terms of the highest degree in people compared to New York. However, it's the place where the most guns are smuggled in. So again, most of the conversation.
I mean, they're smuggling it from, neighbor states, obviously.
No, I agree.
America is not Chicago's not an island on its own, away from everybody else. They're just, they're taking them for Indiana.
No, I'm agreeing with you. But what I'm trying to say is that if you're gonna do a documentary on the crime that's happening there that has basically led into the music, and then the music has led into a culture phenomenon, something that you have popular rappers spurting off from, and media platforms like Akademiks or Adam 22 and No Jumper, you have to start where it really matters. When anyone watched that, and that's what I thought your opinion was, it was shallow because, and I wouldn't say shallow just because you're a shallow-minded person. I think it led you to that opinion. You're going to say...
But I mentioned everything that I just talked to you about in that conversation as well when I was live reacting to it with respect to like material conditions playing a significantly larger role in the way that violence happens in certain communities and not others in an identical capacity. So that's why I'm saying, like, you said that my opinion was shallow, but I think you're hyper focusing on my criticism of you in that video and not necessarily the larger, far more consequential, far more impactful factors at play that I routinely mention and mentioned in that video video as well, which is, again, material conditions and the cycle of violence and poverty, poverty-bred violence.
And that could be true. I will just say, and this was my take, right? So again, I feel like we're agreeing again. My take when I hear your commentary, and your commentary seems to be more focused on the media platforms that was, was involved in pushing the music and yes, perpetuating some of the narratives. It may seem like you're absolving other more important structures when, if say you talked about it for 10 minutes, I watched the whole clip, I'm playing basketball and I'm listening to you. I listen to you a lot, brother. And I was just like, you kind of skimmed over like all the real societal problems that's going into this. And you're like, yo, not gonna lie. I think you even referred to like, yo, these guys are doing like, they're like pieces of shit for it. You know what I mean? And I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong about the exact terming, but you made it seem like we were the biggest culprits of, maybe not, again, causing all this stuff, but taking advantage of it. And in reality, I've always said, and I'm not going to use this point against you because you've just brought it up in your defense. Me and Adam even talked about this. Again, the biggest, the people who actually benefit most from drill music, from all these deaths, from everything you might consider when it comes to neighborhoods like Chicago or all the neighborhoods in Chicago, cities like Chicago, is going to be number one, the record label owners, the executives, the record labels themselves. Then you're going to trickle down and you're going to get to even the rapper. You're going to get to other like conglomerates before you get to the media. The media is usually
no, I don't think so. That's the main difference again.
Okay, what do you think the media is at?
Them, because I don't think that individual actors and the way that they rap about their own personal experiences is as morally damaging as like other people that are inciting.
Let me ask you a question.
Well, he's inciting too. If you're I don't listen. I don't know the songs you're referencing right now. Like I said, I'm not super familiar.
I'm gonna extrapolate just
with
for you.
The culture.
I'll extrapolate just for you. I'll extrapolate for you. So we'll get out of Chicago. So I don't know if you know what's going on in Atlanta. You have the DA who is arresting actual rappers who are not only allegedly committing crimes, but they're rapping about them brazenly and also profiting off them. They're making millions of dollars. Granted.
Yeah. Which should be protected under the First Amendment, by the way. I think that if you're going to put together a RICO case, you can't be using gang signs that people are throwing up as a compounding factor or as a reason alone. Like, obviously, there's more evidence. Like,
let me ask you a question.
One, don't fucking rent a car with your name on it, unfortunately. Don't rent a car with your name on it if that car's going to be used in a drive-by shooting. Okay?
Well, some of the lyrics are using,
herself,
right? Some of the lyrics they're using, they're using a lyric from a rapper named Young Thug. He rapped about, yo, well, you already got the message.
I know. You don't have to say a rapper named Young Thug, bro.
I don't know how much you know. I just got to be like, yo, he rapped about shooting somebody's mama's house up. Guess whose mama's house was shot up? His biggest opposition. And that's an actual, you think that's just free speech. So he could rap about, especially if they have tangible proof that he's linked to the person who shot up the person's house, right? And he's rapping about it brazenly. By the way, here's the thing too, which I got to commend to the Queen. I don't know if you know her. You know the Queen? Not the Queen behind you that's dead. Her name is Fonnie Willis. You got to show some love, brother. Fonnie Willis, she's a queen. This is exactly what she said. If you're rapping about things that we already have evidence to that matches it, it's going to be an indictment. Like, where do you stop with freedom of speech? So can I get on a record, right? So if I did, I don't know, say I did some crime and I literally get on a record and say exactly what I did, just because it's over an 808 and it matches exact evidence. Keep in mind, none of these things matter until it matches exact evidence. Anything, it's one thing to be used in an indictment. It's another thing to wholly be used in a court of law to use to be prosecute you. When everybody keeps saying, oh, they're using evidence to charge these guys, there's no actual count on the indictment that said a lyric. These are supporting facts for the counts. They're charged with gang violence. How do you know these people are in a gang? Well, he has the gang tattoo. I know you might want to say that's just art. That might be spray paint, graffiti. I'm sorry, brother. If 20 y'all niggas got but I don't know if you can say nigga on your stream, so my bad. I said oh my.
You can say it.
Okay. But if there's 20 people with a gang tattoo and this is something that's very known, or if you're rapping about certain stuff that's just actual crimes, freedom of speech just stops somewhere. And I know you believe that. You don't think that people could just snitch. Yo, this not even freedom of speech. It's called self-snitching. If you cheated on your taxes, right? And you made a song. If you cheat on your taxes and you made a song saying, fuck the IRS.
But here's the thing. I get that. But when you are establishing a case, I think the supporting factors, the supporting evidence is infinitely more important than just using rap lyrics. Now, do I think, by the way, you said Fannie Willis is the queen. I'm a little bit more critical. I think that this move to lock up Young Thug, Gunna, and other YSL affiliated rappers, I think that was for publicity. Have they committed crimes? Allegedly, it seems like they have. Okay.
Wait, hold on. Because again, I like to extrapolate because I'd never want to just talk only culture that people be like, oh, we're talking about something he doesn't know. You know the criminal justice system, my guy. You maybe not particularly in Fulton County, Georgia, but let's be honest. Fonnie Willis isn't listening to an album and be like, yo, indictment. You know this is going through grand jury.
I understand.
This is going through this is a grand jury process.
It's a dangerous precedent to set when you're using rap lyrics specifically to tie in other people in a RICO charge, right? Because if you're looking at racketeering and you're saying this is now considered organized crime, if you're saying like YSL is now considered organized crime, is an organized criminal component, I think that does set a dangerous precedent because of the way that rap music is usually just a reflection of people's realities about what they're talking about. All of a sudden, you throw up a gang sign, or all of a sudden you're saying like you're from a particular gang. You might not have actually done anything wrong, but you're just simply saying you're in a gang. But now, if you've rapped about it, you are literally you're literally culpable. And I think that
agree
is
with you there. Once again,
unfair way to over prosecute black people when there is already a problem with white supremacy within the criminal justice system. This does not absolve Young Thug and his criminal actions originally, or his continued potential involvement in criminal actions. But I think Gunna is a great example. I would say, I mean, you're locking people up for things that they may have done in the past, and your association in that overarching case is specifically that they were part of the record label, that they were throwing up signs. Like I think that's a silly way to do it. Free Gunna is what I'm saying.
Hold on. No, well, first of all, you see, I hate to argue on the opposite side of this, but I'm just arguing on the point of facts.
I mean, you did call the DA a queen, so.
Nah, the DA. Hey, listen. If you understand, especially and you ask anybody who really live in Atlanta, crime over the last 5 to 7 years has gotten out of control. it's I don't want to say there's some loose correlation with rap there becoming popular.
Oh, come on. Yeah. Now that Young Thug is in jail, I'm sure that, crime has been solved. Like, come on. That's not.
No.
That has nothing to do with that.
No.
It's
Hold on.
poverty.
Anybody
Poverty
who
is
lives
what causing people to fucking rob other people.
Anybody who lives in Atlanta, if they will actually be honest, right? They don't have to just admit it publicly. Admit it to themselves. The problem in Atlanta is a bunch of rappers who call themselves gangsta has got mad money, mad resources, and think they're above the law. That's the fact. Crime over the years have gotten worse because these guys think they're operating without impunity. And I know
you think the crime rate in Atlanta has something to do with rappers individually acting with impunity? I don't agree with that. I think like when we're talking about crime, it's such a larger problem. It's such a larger problem than like
no. We're not saying it's the
rappers.
only problem, but trust me, them niggas in Atlanta, they're thinking there is no repercussion for how they're moving. You know why this RICO was dropped? They're shooting cops. Every black person or any criminal or anybody who does anything will know you start shooting cops, they're coming after you. These dudes are getting so emboldened, they're shooting police officers. Of course RICOs are going to come down. If they were only killing people in their inner cities, we've seen, look at Chicago. You don't see feds really running in there.
They popped YSL affiliates for not shooting at cops, but for shooting, other members of their community, like ops.
Cleveland Avenue is one of the worst parts of Atlanta. Bro, these are all...
Am I wrong? Wait, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you know more. Wait, did they actually catch anyone that was a YSL affiliate for shooting at cops, or was it just other rival rappers and gang members?
That's why the RICO came down. I could Google it now for you. Hold on, I want to make sure you get the cop name right. They injured a cop, right? So if anyone doesn't know, first of all, this DA also is trying to get Trump for election fraud shit. Okay, so this Trump...
Yeah, I agree with that. That's good.
Yeah,
she should focus on that more.
She's not just trying to, like, by the way, she's black. She's not just trying to just get niggas. She thinks she's staying on a moral high horse. And by the way, I think she's trying to do the Kamala Harris move. She's trying to use this position to get to another position, hopefully to get to politics. Here's the problem that happened. There was a guy whose name is Nut. Okay, he got killed, and before this DA got in the position she got in, she swore to the family, "I'm going to solve that murder." That murder is the quintessential core of this whole YSL indictment. By the way, there's another gang indicted called YFN. Both of their beefs is centered about this one individual that she promised that, "Mom, I'm going to solve that murder." Okay, let's put that to the side. She locked up one group, right? Which was the group of that allegedly was cool with the people that she was going to solve the murder for. But whatever. Then a cop gets shot. He didn't die. And you will see they realize the guy who allegedly did the shooting is part of this quote-unquote YSL and been shooting mad people. So you know what they did? And she did a bold move because people weren't using these gang charges. Because this is how they file RICOs in state level in Georgia. They do the gang charge with a racketeering thing. Nobody was doing it until she says enough is fucking enough. Everybody was getting on Atlanta. Atlanta was never, the crime rate has tripled over the last couple of years. And she said, "I'm dropping these indictments." And trust me, these rappers are outside giving out water, going to church, getting baptized. They're like, you know what I mean? They're giving their life to God. They want no more smoke. And you got to thanks to the Queen Fonnie Willis. Sorry. Hey, listen, I know you want to like defend these communities, but trust me, it would be someone like me or a family member of mine that would live in these communities. We're not jacking the dudes who's just shooting up indiscriminately. Once you start shooting a cop, there is no type. Once you're shooting cops, you don't care nothing about the community. So
okay,
again,
first of all, some might say that cops are the most violent gang in the way that they deal with these sorts of communities, but that's not the point here. Obviously, they're a part of that. Obviously, they're still very much a part of that system, so that they will get additional protection and a lack of scrutiny when they engage in violent behavior, specifically towards black communities. But like I've mentioned time and time again, and I don't know enough about Atlanta in particular, But I will say that I doubt that, the individual actions of rappers themselves
hold on.
is responsible for the Atlanta crime rate.
I just want to give you in your chat this name that you guys could Google at a later time. The police officer's name is David Rogers, okay? He was shot 4 times in the shoulder.
Times.
This is Atlanta
he was shot 6 times while trying to arrest a young Slime Life gang member, according to the warrants. That's what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Right? So, that's what you're talking about. Yeah. You're talking about one individual act of violence against the cop. And I'm saying that, yes, the system comes down to protect its most violent offenders, usually, that being cops. So I get why there would be additional consequences. I mean, look, you have Chris Dorner. Are you familiar with Chris Dorner?
Of course I am. Are you anti-cops? It sounds like you're anti-cops.
What?
It sounds like you don't fuck with cops. Listen, everybody knows in every neighborhood, listen, I operate in hip-hop that usually say fuck 12, but trust me, everybody knows once you start shooting police officers, the shit is over. You can watch any movie.
I understand that.
You can watch
that's why I mentioned
once
the
a cop
Dorner
gets
example,
shot.
right? They fucking lit him on fire in a cabin because he killed cops.
No, I know. And also he was a
Even
former
though he
cop,
was
so
a
he
cop
turned against
originally. So no, I get that. My point is that you mentioned the overarching crime rate rising in Atlanta originally in your conversation.
Yes.
And you said that individual rappers that feel like they can operate with impunity, operate above the law, are responsible for that increase in crime. And I'm saying that is so hyper specific and so narrow.
There's data. There's data that supports
statistics work. So immediately I'm saying no.
There's data that supports it. Like, for example, the reason why this RICO came down, they found out the guy who shot the cop. This guy has like 7 to 8 other shootings. He's accused of like 3 to 4 murders. They're realizing like, yo, hey, listen, these guys are tied in with some of these artists or people with money that are allowing and affording them the opportunity to beat the legal system. So that's why they're hitting them with the RICO. That's honestly what it is. Like, this is not no happenstance. Like, they're realizing these guys, by the way, they're also realizing, put like this, you could track the violence based on who's beefing with what rapper. So, okay, great. There was a rapper named
but like even before drill music or even before rap, before YSL, was there no crime in Atlanta? Was there no violent crime in Atlanta? Were no cops ever killed in Atlanta?
Not like
or Chicago or any of these other places? Of course there was, right?
No. That's why Chicago is different. They don't really jump down like that with Chicago because it's always been like that with Chicago. Atlanta has been, and again, I'm speaking very like, I almost feel like I'm using colloquials to kind of explain the experience there. It's like, yo, but everybody who's accused of some shit.
Can you answer that though before I move on to the next question? Do you think crime, especially this kind of violent crime, did not exist in a place like Atlanta before? I don't know, like the popularization of like.
If we say Chicago, yes. If we say Chicago, yes. If we say Atlanta, no. I'm telling you, look at the crime rate of Atlanta. I'm telling you, we could Google it right now together. Look at the crime rate of Atlanta.
I feel like Atlanta crime in Atlanta, Georgia, has decreased since 2009, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but that would be consistent with. That would be consistent with the rest of the country, for the record.
Hold on. By the way,
a narrative where people constantly talk about like crime being a crime wave, and this is something I talk about quite frequently. I've done a bunch of videos on this, specifically in Los Angeles. I've talked about this. Homicides have increased, certainly in Los Angeles, for example, and yet property crime has fairly consistently diminished. And this is like not numbers that people are making up. This is the cops. This is their own numbers.
Yo, Hasan, I feel like you have a distrust for police officers already, which I think we all do. But here's the thing, and this is just undoubtedly, gang-related violence in Atlanta has increased.
So not overall crime. You're talking about gang-related violence.
I mean, well, again, obviously, there's going to be more focus, at least within the black community, on communities where African Americans are, right? So that's usually places where gang violence is more prone to happen. But I know without a doubt, gang violence has increased. And from what I know, overall violence has increased, at least since this DA has taken office. Now, you're going back to 2009. Like, again, I don't know what happens in 2009. So if we just take this,
No, but that's not an individual year. That's a consistent drop, as you can see, right? If you're looking at my stream, you can see that that's a consistent drop.
Yeah.
All the way to 2018, a minor increase, and then a restabilizing.
no, but hear what I'm saying, Hassan. Like, for example, right now, the place that everybody's trying to, like, we hear rappers speaking about this is Philadelphia. Meek Mill, who's a guy who's promoted death and violence and drugs more than anybody else in Philadelphia. He's even said we have to chill out, we have to stop. There's an irrational increase that is due to just like not only gang violence, but also some people believing that the music that they see is relevant and the artists that they see is relevant are also promoting this type of music. I understand. I understand you want to just extrapolate it to be like, oh, that's just a natural trend. Listen, if the people in these communities, and this is what I'm saying, you're looking shallow on a shallow level.
No, but you said crime increased, but it has decreased, is what I'm saying, and I think that's important.
In Atlanta?
Yeah.
In Philadelphia? Well, in what areas then? In what areas then? Because again, put like this, there's a lot of things that happen in America that we as Black Americans, we could tell when it's affecting our communities.
You said I was talking about Andrew Tate and I rolled him, right? Remember? Because one of the main components in that conversation was his over-reliance on anecdotes over empirical evidence. Now, we have a tendency to be biased in the way that we interpret things, right?
Yeah.
And the media is very good at cutting a narrative. They're very good at cutting a narrative that like crime is on the rise, crime is exploding. But when you look at when you pull yourself out of that for a brief moment, okay, and you think about something even as emotional as like violent crime, you know, I've had friends that have been robbed. You know, it's a very emotional, traumatic experience. I get it, but when you remove yourself from that for a brief moment and think about it with respect to the empirical evidence, you recognize that the media narrative is actually not reflective of the reality itself.
No, I disagree with that, and I know you're trying to say it's anecdotal situations. I'm using,
but that's the truth. I'm showing you the
because
numbers.
I'm using a specific verbiage. The conversation you had with Andrew Tate, he just wanted to say that niggas could drive more than women. Like, that's him. I'm telling you specifically, like, I've seen everything. I'm telling you specifically that the reason why everybody is tuning in to what's going on in Philadelphia these days, the reason why Meek Mill in his heyday, right? We're talking about 2012 to 2015. This is probably the height of his career. He wasn't talking about, oh, there's some crazy murder rate in Philadelphia, because the precincts of where it was happening in. And that's the thing you know about a lot. It's not only about, are we just taking Philadelphia as a whole? Are we taking actual gang violence happening in a few particular cities? If you listen to the Queen, Fonnie Willis, she even said it herself. I'll get you the clip if you want me to, where she said violence on Cleveland Ave has increased. What is Cleveland Ave known for? A particular gang. So I get what you're saying, where you're just trying to use Atlanta, but again, most of these influential things that we're talking about is coming from certain precincts.
First look at the Atlanta police officer shot multiple times on the job this week.
Is that on your end or is that on my end?
Sorry.
So yeah, if you try to have a conversation about crime across the board, like, you got to have a larger conversation about crime in these areas you're talking about, whether it be Philadelphia or not. If you reduce it down to one zip code, if you try to hyper focus on one street number, then you're not going to arrive at the larger, clearer picture. Fannie Willis is not the DA of Cleveland Street. She's the DA of
But she's
Atlanta.
She's focusing on the areas where crime is popping up the most.
No, I know, but by the way, here's the issue, right? Here's the issue. The reason why you don't do that, the reason why you don't look at like an individual street, is because when you hyper focus, when you get down to that as your evidence, that is susceptible to a lot of bias takes and selection bias in the identical capacity to you being susceptible to your own anecdotes, like being motivated by your own personal biases that you can't recognize. Because when you sample an individual street, individual streets can be bloody for an extended period of time, and then the violence moves elsewhere, right? Like, that's why you look at the violent crime rate in Atlanta rather than just specifically one area.
Hassan, listen. I could tell, by the way, I think we both went to Rutgers. I don't know if you know. We both went to Rutgers. I graduated with a biomathematics degree, okay? I took theory of probability, all that shit. And I like how you're talking because it kind of harps on my background from that. Fuck that shit, though. There's hoods in every city. That's the point I'm trying to tell you. Yo, put it like this. The city I live in, I know where the violence is going to be at. If it's over here, it's a fucking problem. It's never violence. I know where the violence is going to be at. I still live in Jersey. My headquarters is in Jersey City. My headquarters is in the art district. They have moved out all the ghetto shit blocks away. There's usually not crime where my headquarters is at. I know exactly where it's going to be. So I know you're like, yo, oh no, the violence, you're acting like it's like Casper. Like, oh no, the ghost might pop up here, then there, then there, then there. We just got to look at it though. No, everybody know where the real, yo, let me ask you a question. If I had to tell you.
Smaller, hyper-specific, localized, selected slivers of crime are susceptible to be cherry picked, though. That's my point.
Yo, hold on.
And that's why you look at the broader crime rate.
Let me ask you a question.
Look at the crime rate across the board.
If you were the commissioner of police and you were in Chicago, right? Granted, every time when you have one of these meetings and you know your lieutenant or whoever is telling you, yo, this is what they're doing in South Side Chicago. Historically, where all the niggas is at, historically, the most violent part, are you going to be like, no, just spread out equally. I want a lot of y'all over by like Peoria. I need like you guys on the outskirts. Or are you going to say, if we got 1,500 cops, put 1,000 cops in Southside Chicago, because that's where they're giving it up. Brother, you not racist, you can say it.
By the way, you're quite literally describing why police operate as an occupying force in these sorts of communities because of that contentious relationship. Police are there to protect and serve. They should be in every neighborhood, and police are not supposed to be the ones solving crime, as they don't actually solve crime, for the record. They don't do a really good job of solving crime at all. So crime, if you and I both understand that crime is not manifesting as a consequence of, like, you know, black people living in a specific area, right? I don't think you meant that.
No, I don't
and
mean
instead,
that. But
a product of material conditions.
It's impoverished neighborhoods.
Then the solution to crime is not about over-policing black neighborhoods, especially considering that black neighborhoods have been over-policed. Chicago's a really good example of this. I'm glad you brought up Chicago once again. So there was a plot of land in the south side of Chicago that was supposed to be sold. And the mayor at the time, Rahm Emanuel, wanted to turn around and turn this into a police academy. But what the community actually wanted was for that plot of land to be sold so that they could get more funding for their school system. CPS is incredibly underfunded. Time and time again, studies have shown that after school programs and basketball leagues and things of that nature have led to an immediate and recognizable drop in crime, specifically in the neighborhoods that they implement these sorts of programs. So why the fuck do these rich white people still continue to avoid that reality and try to over-police black communities? That's not the way you actually solve crime. If you want to solve crime, I want to solve crime. I don't want crime, right? You don't want it either. Then do the right things, right? That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to actually
both
tackle
things
the
could be
problem.
true, though. Hassan, come on. Yo, Hassan. Like, yo, Hassan, put like this. Yo, like, I know you're so intellectually, like, you know, advanced that you understand that, by the way, we're not even disagreeing. It's like you're trying to say, no, all you guys got to do is give them more resources and back out the cops. What? Yo, you back out the cops in Southside Chicago and you get them more resources? Yeah, it's going to be more deaths. You can't believe that. Hey, listen, that might be a long-term. No, that's a long-term perspective to say, hey, listen, this is a real reason why crime is happening, which I agree. Usually anywhere where crime is happening is because they are underserved with resources and they don't have the enough.
I didn't say airdrop Dracos in a fucking O block and leave the cops.
But
I meant like
hold on, but why
like
would you take the police out?
Mentioned social safety nets.
Why would you take the police out? So listen, In Chicago, you talk to anybody who's on, like, you know, you got to talk to like an extra, like, killer or street dude. They're going to be like, yo, they feel they have to have a gun. Everybody's rolling around with illegal guns, and you're trying to say, let's bring the cops out of there. Just bring some more YMCAs and basketball courts, and they're going to get along. What?
I unironically do believe that over-policing, which has increased over the course of the past 50 fucking years, and has, I mean, obviously the overarching crime rate has dropped regardless of wherever you go. But over-policing has not been a solution to the crime in Chicago. So why not try something a little bit different? I'm not saying don't have a single cop in Chicago.
Yo,
what I'm saying is if you want to have cops in Chicago, I'm not a police abolitionist in the sense that I do understand that there is still going to be a group of individuals that are, whether democratically organized or not, maintaining the presence of law and order, okay, and catching pedophiles and shit, okay? I think that you need that. You need and solve crimes. You need detectives. So that's number one. What I'm stating is over-policing has demonstrably not worked. Social services have demonstrably worked universally, not just in Chicago, but in all of these other places. So instead of having a hyper-militarized group of individuals that are not even from the streets that they're patrolling, okay, have people from said community or have a police unit that is accountable to the community in some meaningful capacity, okay, while also simultaneously
with these motherfuckers call themselves savages and
resources and putting them back into social safety nets and school programs.
Yo, I'm gonna shock you with this statement. And by the way, anybody in my chat don't agree. And listen, this is why I'm an independent thinker. Y'all can disagree. We can argue it from here on till the rest of the time. This is why the only person who had a real solution for Chicago that could have possibly worked is motherfucking Donald Trump. There is, I'm serious. Revenge killing, bro. Nobody cared about no social services and after school basketball program when people talking about they smoking on their dead bro, this is revenge violence consistently perpetuating itself. There's nothing you could give other than hard policing of removing those individuals who are more prone to that from that environment. Bro, they're not going to just stop and be like, oh, shit, we just got a nice basketball court. Let me stop killing each other. What?
Okay, but you don't think that, like, the people living in these neighborhoods are, like, inherently more violent, right? You don't think that?
They're rolling around with Dracos and rocket launchers. You gotta send the feds in, bro. Why does
that violence manifest itself in the way that it does?
Say again?
Why does the violence that you speak of manifest itself in the way that it does?
Because it's cyclical. Because it's of course the initial reason is because of the societal effect on their family lives or them as people in terms of lack of resources and shit like that. But once violence starts, right, you're usually seeing, like, for example, when Lil Durk, like, again, I'm using anecdotal shit to kind of like prove my point, but I have a bunch of them. When someone dies, you're going to see a weekend of shooting. If someone gets hurt, it's a lot of revenge stuff. It's literally just warfare. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily saying it's obviously, again, I'm not disagreeing with you in the sense of to fix this.
Why do you think white people in Connecticut don't handle it that way? Do you think that there is an inherent reason for it? Or do you think it's because those guys in, like, middle class America have a significantly better material condition than the dudes you're talking about who are living in literally, like, third world conditions in the wealthiest nation on earth?
Hold on. Let me tell you this. If white dudes in Connecticut, if you give me about 30 of them and all of their brothers or sisters was a victim of gun violence, maybe half of them would be like, you know what, I'm going to seek therapy. I'm going to try to, move on from this. The other them, they're picking up a stick, bro. They're going to have some revenge. Especially if they believe.
My point is, if you're in a better position overall, if you are subjected to better material conditions,
so the initial
overall,
problem didn't start
you're
then.
not going to find yourself in a cycle of violence anyway.
Oh, okay.
So when I talk about it, I talk about literally fixing the material conditions because I want the underlying problem to go away.
Okay, but how do you stop the cycle of violence? Okay, so you build the best infrastructure.
I never said there should be no police whatsoever, by the way. I do understand that if someone commits a crime,
you said less police.
Go in there, stop it, make sure that the person is no longer committing crime. I understand that. It's pretty basic stuff.
I don't know, like, I look at the comm stats when it comes to, like, places like Cook County and compared to other places. The amount of gun violence that police supposedly have to respond to or properly investigate, they have given up. Especially even after, remember what happened in Baltimore when people just call the police racist?
I'm glad we're giving them billions of fucking dollars, so they're just like, yeah, fuck it.
We're
giving up.
Hold on. Okay, no, okay, I'm
they
with
need
you.
more money, I think.
No, I'm with you on that. But you're saying less police when we have also demonized the police for doing what they need to do to stop it.
No, they're not doing what they need to do to stop it. Like Derek Chauvin wasn't doing what he needed to do to stop George Floyd, right? You understand that? You agree with me on that?
George Floyd is not a dude shooting up the block or doing gang violence like how most of them niggas in Chicago is doing, bro. Yo, that's so isolated.
They're not doing that.
Look,
if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and cops are a fucking hammer.
I'll give you that point.
I'll
give you that point.
They are
we could have
dealt
better
with
cops.
a problem that they are incapable of solving.
No, I'll give you that point. We do need better cops, and I don't want to sit here and act like I'm saying every cop is perfect. My whole point is that, listen, I'm with you, and I think there's a lot of moments and points of agreement. Like, I'm saying, yo, you're right. Like, we do need the better infrastructure and all these other things to stop the cycle, because you're right. People in Connecticut, they're not doing that. But we also have to be very aggressive and very intentional in the approach to let people know that, hey, listen, violence can't beget more violence, because that's what I realized in Chicago.
I agree. That's why cops are a terrible fucking method of solving violence.
So how do you stop more violence when people are moving off road? You remember
you just said violence doesn't beget more violence, and now you're saying cops are the only way to stop violence.
No. Well, if
you and I are in agreement.
No.
Cops are a violent force.
Yo, because Hassan, somebody kills your brother, you're picking up a gun. Maybe. Or you're more likely to. Especially if you have nothing to live for, or that's a way of life, you're probably going to do it. What I'm trying to say is that you have to stop the cycle even if you improve the conditions. Because put it like this, when these people are talking to me, they're saying this, like, that group or that gang killed my cousin. I don't give a fuck what they did. Bro, it's the same thing with war. We watch war on
look at the Atlanta police officer shot multiple times.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have a quick question for you, right? Let's say in your younger days, would you ever throw hands? Like if someone, try to fuck with you?
I would if it came to that.
Okay. You probably won't do that right now, would you?
Depend on what level.
And I'm not saying this to be like, oh, you're a pussy or anything. There's a larger point here.
It depends on what level, but also if I could avoid it, of course I would not. Because, I have a lot more things going on.
Exactly. That's my point. You have way too much to fucking lose for getting into a dumbass scuffle. And if people have more to lose, then they're less likely to act in violent ways. But if you have no fucking future prospects, if your school system is completely fundamentally broken, the teachers don't want to fucking be there, you're still working on like textbooks that are from 1957, okay? And you see so much violence happening as a consequence in every fucking facet of your life. And you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Of course I'm going to pick up a gun and go and do whatever the fuck I can to survive.
No,
okay,
I agree with you
that's
there.
The point.
I
and
agree with you there.
If you're born into that environment, it is very difficult to get out of it. And the only way to actually get out of it is to make sure that you have something to lose, to make sure that you have a future prospect, to make sure that these kids are being educated, to make sure that they have.
Here's the biggest thing,
though.
Here's the biggest thing, though. You see, education won't do it. The majority of these people, and this is why the feds, which they've rarely ever really fucked with Chicago like that, unless it's super drug stuff, they went into O-Block. And what O-Block is a low-income housing option. And whatever you're saying with that, by the way, at least I know in Jersey, I don't know if you still live in Jersey, but if you go and build
I live in Los Angeles.
Okay, if you build a high rise, if you build anything, usually they require you have some option for people of low income housing. So when you
those
have
policies, unfortunately, do not meet the demands of the market, though. But yes, I'm familiar. They do it in New York too.
But hold on, when you have inherently a bunch of people who are living in low income housing, despite the opportunity, they're more prone to just be at risk of throwing it all away just off a petty disagreement. You're living pretty good. You're going to think about it 5 times. So would I. But these people, you're living in O Block, and this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about people who are living in mansions. Like, I don't think, you know what I mean? Like,
but that's
if right
why
now,
I said raise the fucking minimum entry level for existence for all Americans. We have the wealth to be able to do so. We're the wealthiest
it
nation
sounds like
on earth.
socialism.
And you still got motherfuckers living in Alabama, specifically in black neighborhoods, with no working sewage system. Like, that's disrespectful as fuck. That's completely ridiculous. You literally still have plantations in Angola. The Louisiana State Penitentiary operates like a fucking plantation. It's named after a plantation.
It's horrible. I agree
like,
with you.
this is not a mistake. This is why I get so fucking mad whenever people try to deny white supremacy's permanent fucking institutional power in American development. There's a reason for all of this. Okay. That's why motherfuckers like Tim Pool, who you said you watch, are regularly serving that same institutional, oppressive hierarchy by denying the reality of white supremacy in societal development.
Okay. So then I ask you, right? Because, and by the way, I like watching both of y'all because I think y'all are rational, and I see a lot of thought to what
he is not rational. He is not even remotely rational. But anyway, let's.
All right. So when you're also kind of borderline teetering on what would most people say is socialism, my guy. Like, again.
Wait, what? Let me tell you something about myself then.
Oh, you believe in that?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't give a shit. Yeah. I don't think that the capitalist organization of the economy is adequate. We don't need to have that conversation.
Wait, no.
But yes.
It's no way you believe in that. Hey, listen, I'm one of the biggest pocket watchers ever known to man. Like, I've already summed you up in what you make. And I sum up rappers, I sum up entertainers. Salute to my guy Kai. I just did a whole little rap sheet of his thing.
Socialism is not a poverty cult. You don't have to be poor to be socialist, even though you can still advocate for those who are less fortunate than you.
You wouldn't give up the majority of your luxuries just to improve the lives of other people who may not be trying or working hard as you. Stop it.
That's not socialism. That is a bastardized American interpretation of socialism.
So
Russell Brand once famously said, when I was poor and I advocated for socialism, they said I was jealous of the wealthy's success. Now I'm wealthy and I advocate for socialism, and they say I'm a hypocrite. Turns out they just don't want me advocating for socialism. They don't want me.
No. I'm gonna tell you why they're gonna say you're a hypocrite.
Of the working class.
I'll tell you why they're gonna say you're a hypocrite. They're gonna say you're a hypocrite because
they say it all the time. I don't give a shit.
Even if there isn't an overarching or some type of policy that could just like advocate or just gonna make this happen, you have acquired a lot of wealth. Why don't you start distributing your wealth to try to at least?
I do. But socialism is not about wealth distribution, even though I do that. But socialism is not about wealth distribution. Again, like I said, that's a misunderstanding. And people also have fucking, a lot of dummies have actually canceled me over fucking buying a house and shit because they're stupid. But
I checked out
socialism is at its very roots about making sure that you earn what you fucking make.
Hold on. You wouldn't move 5 niggas from Skid Row in that beautiful house. I've seen it on Google. You know you would not do it. And socialism would not be proud with you.
Wait, that's not social. Wait, what the fuck? That's...
Of course I wouldn't resources,
do that,
brother.
because that has nothing to do with socialism. Why would I fucking do that? I can't individually solve problems. If personal charity was a foolproof method of solving the underlying problems that exist in society, and anyone who gave money to charities was deemed a socialist, then Jeff Bezos would be the biggest fucking socialist around. It's not about that at all. It's about how you make your money.
That's usually for tax
purposes. Do you have
purposes,
capital?
okay.
Do you or it's more so about earning a larger percentage of earning a larger percentage of the wages that you are creating for the company that you work for. That's what socialism is about. It's about getting the adequate pay and autonomy that you have in your life.
I would be down to give away, the majority of my resources that I've acquired by working so hard if I seen Hasan do it first. If you were like, yo, listen, man, I'm for real.
Okay,
if you liquidated all your
then,
shit and I saw you with a nice, a nice tent that you were kicking it with, with like just one of those little fans with the battery. And I'm like, yo, if he's doing that, maybe I should sell my Lamborghini.
Okay, but you're missing the point because I don't want anyone to be living inside of tents. And I think that we have enough money as we collectively create
maybe a mobile
enough
trailer
wealth to ensure that. I have no problem paying my taxes. You earlier asked if I like dodge taxes or anything. I have no problem paying my taxes. I pay 55% or something like that. I live in Los Angeles. You know what I mean? I pay the highest.
You use some tax breaks though. You're working inside your house. I know you. So you're saying you don't?
Not at all.
You don't use the tax system to your benefit
it
at all.
doesn't even matter. What I'm trying to say is that I don't do that. But what I'm trying to say is, I would rather. I have no issue paying higher percentage of taxes even now, but there are also a lot of untaxed income out there that billionaires and millionaires take advantage of.
I agree.
Okay, like for example, there's a concept called buy, borrow, die. These guys, instead of paying taxes, they'll just assume debt, right? They'll go to a bank and they'll say, I have $7 billion in assets. Give me $100 million right now. That's how Elon Musk, for example, just bought Twitter. He took $40 billion from a bunch of different banks. So he took that as a loan. Now all he needs to do is pay off the incredibly tiny interest rate on that loan on this, wonderful financial package that they afford him that they would never afford to the random Joe Schmo when you try to get a fucking loan. So that's how they pay. That's what they do rather than pay taxes, because now that's debt.
But hold on,
now he has debt that he can use against all the taxes that he has to pay.
Well, is that necessarily?
It's called buy, borrow, die.
No, and I believe you on that. So that's where I would ask you. It feels like you're just like most Americans, and not necessarily believing in what people would say is socialism. You just believe that the richest people of this country should actually not be allowed to weasel and squeeze themselves out of not paying what's actually owed.
If Jeff Bezos paid my tax percentage, we would have like 90% of the problems would be fucking diminished. Okay. But no one does that. No one even in my financial predicament even does that, except for like, I guess, Twitch streamers that I do know that don't give a shit and don't try